that's a movie I think is crazy underrated, and I don't know anyone outside of us that's seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. Do you think it has to do with the fact that Liam Neeson it seemed like around that time he was doing like multiple projects?
I think maybe it was the fact that he was like the action guy for a long time, and that movie's not really an action movie.
Yeah.
At all. Maybe people expected an action movie, and that's not what they got. But I'd have to look up to see what the box office numbers on it were, but I don't think that movie made its budget back at all. And I would be surprised that budget was over maybe $15 million. But it's really good. It's such a good, really kind of dark, like I said, like a real nasty piece of noir.
Mm-hmm.
Because the characters are all just awful people. And they do really awful things. But it's a really good movie. And I wish that more people saw it. But Scott Frank adapted that novel and directed that movie, so I'm gonna give him credit for that one. Because that's a movie I really like. But this is Get Shorty. This is the movie. It's got great funny dialogue. It's got a real good kind of jazzy, funky score that John Lurie did. But it's also got tracks from Us Three,
mm-hmm.
from Booker T and EMGs. It's got multiple tracks from both of those. It's got, I think, multiple tracks from Morphine, who's a band that I really love that I got into because of Get Shorty, because they have a couple of tracks in the film. I think that the four leads, Travolta, Rene Russo, Gene Hackman, and Danny DeVito are all great in it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, beyond those four, it's got a murderer's row of just supporting cast members, of just fantastic character actors. And we're going to go down the list here. It's got Dennis Farina, Delroy Lindo, James Gandolfini, John Grice, who you might know from Napoleon Dynamite. He's the werewolf in Monster Squad.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I know John Grice from Martin. The Martin Lawrence TV show that was on in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because he was the engineer at the radio station. He's in a great movie called Jackpot from like the early 2000s, where he's like a karaoke singer. He's super good in that. David Paymer is in the movie, who's really good in his one or two scenes as Leo. Miguel Sandoval, who is Escobar, when we get into the plot, who's really good and has a real funny scene or two. Who else? Martin Ferrero, who is Chili Palmer's friend, Tommy, in Miami, who's got like a handful of really funny scenes. And he's most notably the guy in Jurassic Park, the lawyer that gets eaten off of the toilet.
Yeah.
That's Martin Ferrero. But when I looked him up on IMDb, he hasn't been in a whole lot in probably the last 20 years or so. But he did a lot of work prior to Get Shorty. And he was on Miami Vice for a long time, too. That's where I knew him from. Obviously, before the toilet in Jurassic Park, which is, like I said, probably what he's most famous for now. But it's just all these great character actors in the movie. So there's so much to love about it. But why don't we start breaking it down?
All right, let's do it.
I mean, we got into all the pre-production stuff. don't we start breaking down the plot? And then I'll shout out all my favorite fucking lines and all the great moments in the film. Let me see all my notes, my copious amount of notes here. So the movie opens in Miami with Chewie, who is John Travolta, and Tommy, who I said was Martin Ferrero. They're in the restaurant. They're talking. Travolta's talking about movies, about the old movie theaters closing, and maybe he could operate it and then show a bunch of old gangster movies. He says James Cagney movies, and then they see Ray Barboni in the restaurant, who's like a rival mobster, or works for another guy. He's kind of the guy that collects from this other mobster as Chewie is from this guy named Momo. They see him. That's Dennis Farina as Ray Barboni, and we'll get into Dennis Farina in a moment here because, wow, he is amazing in this movie. And Ray Barboni, also known as Ray Bones, comes over to kind of break Chewie's balls. And the real Chewie Palmer is one of the guys with him in the restaurant when he comes up to Travolta. I wish I knew exactly which one it was, but I don't think the credits make it clear. It just says, like Ray's friends or something, and one of them is Chewie Palmer.
Or, yeah, like the wise guy or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but one of those guys is the real Chewie Palmer. And then Ray Bones goes up to Joey, and first great line in the movie, he sees him, and because it's Miami, it's also cold outside. Travolta mentions that. Tommy, Martin Ferrero, mentions that when he's talking to Travolta in the very beginning. But Ray Bones comes up to him and says, "Hey," he's talking to his two buddies. And he just says, "Hey, it's Chewie outside, it's Chewie inside. It's a regular fucking Chewie fest." And just like the contempt that he says it with, trying to get over on Chewie Palmer, is so funny. And he kind of laughs to himself after he says the line. And then they leave. Chewie goes to get his coat, finds out that Ray took his coat, and he's really upset about losing the coat because it was a gift from his ex-wife. So Tommy drives him over to Ray's house. He says, "Hey, don't start anything because this is going to turn into a big thing." And Chewie Palmer, I should refer to him by his character's name, says, "Hey, I'm not going to say anything if at all. I'm only going to say what I need to if I even have to speak." So he goes to collect the coat, knocks on Ray's door, and as soon as Ray opens it up, boom, he just punches him right in the nose and breaks his nose. And then just casually walks right past him to grab the coat and walks right out again while Ray Bones is yelling and screaming and bleeding all over the place. And then it cuts to the next scene, and you see Ray with the big bandage on his nose coming into the barbershop where Chewie works out of, and he's got a gun in his hand. He's headed there to kill Chewie, but the two old guys in the barbershop start coughing and making noise to let Chewie know that, hey, someone's coming. And Chewie just casually pulls a gun out of his desk, waits, he points it at the door and waits, and as soon as Ray opens it, boom, he shoots like across his scalp. And immediately Ray drops his gun and grabs his head and starts screaming.
"Someone call 911.
Yeah, someone call 911. Someone call. And he's like running out of the barbershop. And then the next scene is Ray with a bandage on his nose and with a bandage on his forehead, standing there talking to another mobster. I think is Jimmy Cap is the mobster's name. I think that's Jimmy Cap. It's Alex Rocco is the guy who plays him, who you might know from, he's in The Godfather. Mm-hmm. He was the voice of Roger Myers, the guy who created Itchy and Scratchy on The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. He's talking to Alex Rocco, and he's talking about how this guy Chewie needs to be taken out. He's got no respect. And Alex Rocco. I don't want to refer to him as Jimmy Cap because I'm not entirely sure if that was Jimmy Cap or not. He just says, no, he has no respect for you. And, this guy belongs to Momo, and if you kill him, then we're going to have a mob war on our hands. And, do you really want to go to war over a coat? And then it cuts to Brooklyn, and this guy Momo, who's the big gangster that Chili works for, is they're driving up to an abandoned building somewhere, and Momo needs to go in there, and he tells the guy, hey, are you sure you checked it out? I don't want any fucking surprises when I go in here. And he's climbing the stairs, and he's hopping and popping because he's a bigger guy. And he opens up the door, and then the lights come on, and everyone screams, surprise, because it's a surprise party for his birthday. And he immediately clutches his chest and has a heart attack and dies. And then boom, then you have the opening credit sequence. So all of that stuff, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the first 5 minutes of the film that set up the rest of the movie. But all of that stuff happens before the opening credits, in which, has a great jazzy number over it. I think that was Us 3 that does that track. But at this point in time, I want to tell you that I go to watch this movie with my mom. I don't know where my dad was at the time, but it was just my mom and I went to go watch this movie. And Momo says, I don't want any fucking surprises. He goes inside, big surprise. He has a heart attack and dies. And my mom laughed so fucking hard at that. And for so long, she's laughing through the entire credit sequence. She's laughing hysterically because that just made her day. That line and that whole sequence of events. And my mother, unfortunately, is gone now, but she had a really loud, boisterous laugh. And if something made her laugh, something got to her, it was 10 minutes straight that she would be laughing. And I'll never forget watching the movie with her and her just laughing hysterically throughout the entire credit sequence.
The way he falls over is great too.
He just falls, just and the look on everyone's face at the party. So after the credit sequence, it cuts back to the barbershop, and Tommy and Chili are having this really funny, random discussion where Tommy says that he most people die in bed. Mm-hmm. And he says, that's not going to happen to me. And then, Chili says, well, what are you going to do, not sleep? And he's like, no, I'll sleep in a chair. People don't die sleeping in chairs. It says they die sleeping in bed. It's just this super random discussion for a couple of minutes. Maybe not that long, but to start off this entire scene, it's just him talking about, I'll sleep in the chair. I'll go to a coffee shop and just pull my hat down and sleep in the booth. But I won't die because I won't be in bed, so I won't die in bed.
He said, how many people you know of died in a coffee shop?
Exactly. Oh, he's got that real thick, kind of New York accent, so he says coffee shop. he said the way he says it's really funny. So they're sitting there. The two old guys that were in the barbershop earlier in the pre-credit sequence are sitting in there, and then Ray Bones and his bodyguard come in, and immediately Ray tells a joke, and I don't want to repeat it because he uses a word that I'm not going to throw out on the podcast. But he walks into the barbershop, makes an off-color joke, and then immediately laughs to himself again like he did in the beginning with the Chili outside, Chili inside joke. Mm-hmm. He just laughs to himself. He's so amused that he does that, and he tells the two old guys to beat it. And then he's asking, he goes back and gets the book, and he asks Chili if he's if he's collected from this Leo